unsuccessful in fulfilling this mitzvah, he's already become accustomed to the nervousness, and therefore, even though he hasn't yet consummated the marriage, he still has an obligation to recite Kriya Shema. That's where we are in our discussion. The Gemara had then entered into a discussion based on our Mishnah that if that's the case, what you see from here is that you're allowed to do Be'ilas Mitzvah on Shabbos, even though there may potentially be something that looks like a malacha, which is causing the virgin to bleed, and you're not allowed to create an injury on Shabbos. The Gemara in Nida suggests that there may be, and possibly there may be another malacha as well. The other malacha as well is the malacha of oneh. You're doing a constructive act of creating a new form where one previously did not exist, because what you're doing is you're creating a petach, you're creating an opening where an opening previously didn't exist. So just like, let's say, when you're doing a construction project and you bore an opening in a structure, or if you have a kli, you have a utensil that's completely sealed on all sides, and you bore open an opening that acts as a way of getting the contents inside and out. So you're doing a constructive act. So there may be, that would be a problem as well. The Gemara says what we may infer from our Mishnah is the fact that the Mishnah exempts the chassan on Friday night as well, means that a chassan is allowed to deflower a virgin on Shabbos, even though there are two potential malachas that he's violating. Why he's not violating those malachas is something that we're going to be seeing shortly. Any questions at this point?
Are there any other malachas that you're putter from besides davening? Why did we just pick this particular?
Yeah, it's only the things that require concentration. So he's putter from Kriya Shema. He might be putter from Gan Smayriv as well for that very same reason. So if he doesn't have to recite Kriya Shema, he doesn't have to recite Shemona Esrei either. Yeah, no other mitzvah that he has that night that he has to focus on. Okay.
Is it a bigger mitzvah to deflower the wedding night, or is it a mitzvah?
So that's an interesting question. Is there specifically a mitzvah to consummate the marriage on the wedding night? It seems that there is, but it seems like from the language of what we're learning now is that not everyone is successful, and so you got to keep on trying until you succeed on all subsequent nights.
We should deflower it, at least try.
It's a mitzvah. It's a mitzvah. It's a mitzvah that's part of what the marriage is all about, is to consummate the marriage. That's the whole objective of marriage, or I shouldn't say the whole objective, but it's certainly one of the main objectives of marriage.
Okay. But I presume that once consummated, the heter disappears.
Correct. Once he's successful, he no longer has the patur from Kriya Shema. It's not just automatically 4 days. It's up to 4 days. So the Gemara now says, Amar Rebbe Yaakov Bar Zavdi, and we started seeing this yesterday. So it's like 7-8 lines from the bottom. Amar on page Chaf Zayin Amud Beis. Amar Rebbe Yaakov Bar Zavdi Kashyase Kume Rebbe Yossi Ma Beina Levein Shover Es Hechavis Velechol Mimenu Gerogeros. So the question that he's asking is, why do you need to infer this from our Mishnah that it is permitted to deflower a virgin on Shabbos? Shouldn't it already be obvious from other sources? So, for example, what is the difference between deflowering a virgin and breaking open a container on Shabbos in order to get its contents, which is called an act of mikalkel? You're doing a destructive act, not a constructive act. Now, normally we don't midrabanan. We don't allow you just to go ahead and start breaking utensils. But if you're breaking a utensil in order to get the food inside, so then we do allow you to destroy a package on Shabbos, which is why, we actually did a smichas chaver unit on the whole idea of opening packages on Shabbos. Sometimes you're permitted to open packages on Shabbos because the act of opening is not constructive, it's destructive to the packaging. There are other times when potentially opening a container on Shabbos is a constructive act because you've created essentially a kli.
Yeah.
You've created now a usable utensil for getting things in and out. That's why some people refrain from opening cans of soda on Shabbos, because by opening the can, you've created a useful opening in the utensil. Other poskim say it's totally fine because it's a disposable utensil and for other reasons as well. But the question that is essentially being asked here, it should be obvious to all that it's permissible to deflower a virgin on Shabbos because you're doing a destructive act and not a constructive act. You're devaluating her on the market because she's no longer going to be a virgin. And you're also destroying whatever membrane existed. So therefore, why is that? Why do you need our Mishnah to infer that you're allowed to deflower a virgin on Shabbos? That's the question. So Amar lei v'mor de basra. So he says, why don't you go to the next part of the Mishnah that you're asking on? Because we talked about, you just quoted a Mishnah from Masechah Shabbos that talks about the permissibility to break a utensil in order to get its contents. But that Mishnah says, provided that your intention in breaking and creating a breach in the kli is not to make it into a usable kli, is to not make it into a usable utensil where the breach that you've created now allows you to go access the contents and to go in and out of that utensil. V'kan shemiskaven la'asosa bu'ula kemisha miskaven la'asosa kli. And here, your intention is to make her no longer a virgin, meaning it's not just that you want to deflower her now so that you can consummate the sexual union. It's also that you want to make it easier in the future to have intimacy with her. And so that's a constructive act. And it's also constructive because now she'll be able to conceive. She'll be able to bear you children. So there's some constructiveness to this act. It's not purely destructive. And so based on that, that's why we need this Mishnah as an inference that it's permissible to deflower a virgin on Shabbos. Now, the question still that we have yet to answer is, why is it permissible? If you're not allowed to do a constructive opening, why then is it permissible? All we've done is to infer that it is permissible. We'll have to wait until the Gemara clarifies that for us. So now the Gemara, first, before we get to that, the Gemara is going to ask another question. Why Rav Yitzchak bar Rav Misharshia makshe ma beina le mephis morsa b'Shabbos? What is the difference between deflowering a virgin and squeezing a pimple on Shabbos? Now, this sugya of mephis morsa is an elaborate sugya in Masechah Shabbos and Masechah Ksubis, where the Mishnah says that you're not allowed to squeeze a pimple, but if it's a constructive act. But what if it's purely a destructive act, that your whole objective is just to get out the pus? So the Gemara says that you're allowed to squeeze a pimple on Shabbos. And we actually paskin that way.
I suppose if it bleeds.
One second. We paskin that way that you're allowed to squeeze pimples on Shabbos, provided that you know that there's not going to be any bleeding.
I'm sorry.
Okay, yeah, you're jumping the gun, Paul. And why is that permissible? It's permissible because it's considered to be doing a destructive act. What would be the constructive act? Let's say you lance a pimple or a boil with the intention of it continuing to drain regularly. And you want that hole to remain open. So in that situation, you would not be permitted to lance or squeeze the pimple. My wife found on the internet, there's a YouTube channel for the pimple popper doctor.
Dr. Pimple.
Dr. Pimple Popper. Yeah.
You guys have too much free time.
Yeah. Have you seen this?
No, I heard from the rabbi.
From the rabbi.
It's crazy stuff.
It's a
No,
crazy show.
No, people get thrill out of it just to be able to see the,
Well, people come with crazy, not just, they come with crazy oils, like big humps on their back and lipos, or they say this, all these different things. That's insane.
Cricket for the throws.
yeah, it takes all kinds.
It
Yeah.
does indeed.
Anyway, so,
Also to beautify your appearance, is that considered constructive?
no, that wouldn't be considered constructive, I guess. In any event, so we actually paskin this way, that if you have a pimple, as long as you are confident that there's not going to be any bleeding as a result of squeezing the pimple, you're allowed to squeeze the
How would you
pimple.
know that?
Well,
Past experience.
yeah, you guess, Pat, like, let's say it's a blackhead, right? Sometimes a blackhead,
So
you
black
know.
is not pimple with pus.
Sometimes it depends. If it's a dry pus, then it would be okay.
Only
So-
Dr. Pimple Popper knows for sure.
So here's the question. The question that the Gemara is asking is, once we've established that you're allowed to pop pimples on Shabbos, why is a woman's deflowering a virgin any different from just popping her pimple? Okay, and so the question the Gemara is asking is, again, same question. Why do you need to infer the permissibility of deflowering a virgin on Shabbos from our Mishnah when it should be fairly obvious from another source, which is that you're allowed to pop pimples on Shabbos? So Amar Lei, similar answer to what we just saw before. Amar Lei, the more de Basra. Look at that very same Mishnah about popping pimples on Shabbos that you just quoted from. It says, "Uvilvad shelo yiskaven lasos peh." The kan mikaven shu miskaven lasos beula kimishu miskaven lasos la peh. And there's a lot of girsa controversy over here. So the answer that is given is the same answer as before, by the case of the breaking of the kli. That the Mishnah there says by popping pimples, that it's only permissible if you just want to get the pus out. But if you also want to keep the opening of that pop, you want to keep that opening open so that it continues to drain, then it's not permissible to pop pimples on Shabbos. And here too, your objective is to keep her opening open when you deflower her, so that it'll be easier to have relations in the future and so that she'll be able to bear you children. So therefore, this is considered to be a constructive act. That's basically, and again, you therefore need the Mishnah to tell you that it is nonetheless permissible. We still have to figure out why. Okay? So far, so good?
Just to go back to the, opening up bottles and cans, so, cans of tuna, the plastic turning of the bottles, open up a can, is it not like people that we hear that it's not a problem to do it?
I didn't say that at all.
Oh, okay,
So I never said that. I don't open cans on Shabbos. I'm saying there are poskim who argue that it's okay based on a number of factors, but even the poskim who say that you can open a can of soda will not allow you to open a can of tuna on Shabbos.
Mhm.
There is a way to do it, by the way. If you bore a hole on the bottom of the can, like with a sharp knife, you stab the can a couple of times, so that by the time that you open the can, it's no longer usable as a kli. So then you can do that. But lechatchila, a person should always strive to have his cans open before Shabbos.
Is
Yes,
Freddie more lenient on this? Am I remembering correctly?
I don't remember.
we open on Shabbos for the kiddushes when we have pop. This is from Rabbi Towns, they open every
In
bottle.
advance.
The bottles?
Mhm.
Yeah, okay. I'm not sure if I would require that, but it's definitely a
It
good
was
thing to
just-
do. Yeah,
That big, whatever, they just do it automatically.
Yeah.
It's been done, so.
yeah, sure. Okay.
That's for metal, not plastic?
No, the plastic on a pop bottle.
I understand, but it's only plastic or is some metal there?
No, I think you have some bottles have metal.
Yeah, metal's more.
The smaller ones, the bigger ones
That's
have
true.
plastic.
Yeah, yeah.
They're all plastic, I heard is fine, the metal's a problem.
What would be the difference between plastic and metal?
It's just the way that they're manufactured. With the plastic, the ring tends to stay
I
attached.
think we had an SCP video.
And,
on that.
yeah,
I don't
right.
know.
And with the metal breaks off a ring.
So little tabs on, let's say on a bubbly or something like that, you pull off, that's an issue?
Talking about a can of
Yeah,
soda?
I can, yeah.
Yeah,
Bubbly. Or what do you
Um,
think? Bubbly.
There are many
Busy bubbly.
many poskim are lenient to allow you to open cans of soda on Shabbos. I refrain from opening cans of soda on Shabbos because I feel that there is, in a sense, a creation of a kli.
Even if you empty the whole can out, then it's.
Yeah, I mean, you can definitely mitigate that, and you can definitely rely on those poskim who are more lenient. I know a lot of very firm people who open cans on Shabbos. I mean, I've been to enough Shalom Zachars and Kiddushes where I see them opening cans on Shabbos. I think as a policy, the shul should never allow it. We shouldn't have cans of soda at our Kiddushes and our events on Shabbos, and I'm pretty sure that's what Rabbi Taub instituted. But I would say that it would be preferable to be machmir if you can. Okay. So let us go on. Tani. Lo yivol adam be'ila lechatchila b'Shabbos mipnei shehu osa chabura v'acherin matirin. Now we have a brisa, which actually presents us with a debate whether it is permissible to deflower a virgin on Shabbos or not. The first opinion says, contrary to what we inferred from our Mishnah, is that you are not allowed to deflower a virgin on Shabbos because you're creating an injury. You're drawing blood. But the other ones, the other opinion, the acherim, the other sages, are permissible. They permit you to do that. Now we'll get to the reason why of the acherim that permit. And by the way, if you learn that you're not allowed to deflower a virgin on Shabbos, how do you understand our Mishnah that says that you're exempt on Friday night from reciting Kriya Shema? So there's two possibilities. One is that our Mishnah only goes according to the opinion that you're permitted to deflower a virgin. Or you could say, like we had suggested yesterday, that maybe our Mishnah is referring to the nervousness that a young bacher has, even when he's marrying a woman who's not a virgin, who's let's say a widow or divorcee and so forth. Maybe there too, there could be nervousness. So there's different ways of understanding our Mishnah. But in any event, Amar Rabbi Yossi beRabbi Avon, ta'amona da'acherim lemelachtohu miskavein and me'eleha na'aseh chabura. So the answer is, says Rabbi Yossi, is that the chassan is not thinking about creating an injury. He's thinking about the delight of sex. That's all he's thinking about. The fact that he's causing her to bleed is not his intention. And since it's not his intention, this is what's called davar she'eino miskaven. It's not something that he has intention to do. He's not intending to do the malacha. And since it's a davar she'eino miskaven, so we can be lenient when you're in the process of doing a mitzvah. Now, and if you take a look, let's see, which footnote would I want you? Okay, footnote number 7. L'das acherim kavanas hachasan bebeila hi l'shem hana'aso bilvad. According to the permissive opinion, the chassan's not thinking of, oh, I want to deflower her, so she'll be able to conceive in the future. He's just thinking about the joy of sex. Ve'av shehi besula ein kavanaso kedei lahotzi damo kedei lasus pesach. And even though she's a virgin, he's not thinking about creating an opening. He's not thinking about removing the blood. Amnam hemodim l'tanakama shadam besulam doma l'dam sha'ar evarim ve'achein nases chabur b'maisa habeila ach mikol makom mekevin she'eno miskavein la'asiyas hachabura lefichach ein kan iser shel meleches choivel. He says there's a controversy in the Gemara Nida whether even if your intention is to deflower her and to remove the blood, whether that's still considered to be a malacha on Shabbos. Why? Because the Gemara in Nida presents two ways of looking at the blood that is inside the hymenal sac. Is it just an isolated membrane where the blood is not connected to the rest of the circulatory system? Or is it just like any other part of the body? So if you look at it as just like any other part of the body, then by causing it to bleed, you're doing what's called netilas neshama. You're diminishing the soul of the individual. And that's the definition of a chabura on Shabbos. That's one of the malachas. If, however, you look at it as an isolated sac of blood, then by causing it to rupture and bleed, you're not technically doing the malacha.
Has to be circular, has to be.
Of course, right? In other words, modern medicine would indicate that all tissue in the body is connected and the circulatory system is connected. Be that as it may, the point is that we're circumventing that discussion here because we're basically saying the reason for the permissibility here is not because we view it as an isolated sac of blood, but rather because even if it's part of the rest of the circulatory system, it's still permissible because that's not his intention. When you do an act and a malacha is done as a byproduct, that's called a davar she'eino miskave. And since it's a davar she'eino miskave and it's not your intent, the rabbi said, normally we would tell you that it's still usher for you to do because you know that a malacha will result. But here, since you're doing a mitzvah, we tell you that it's okay.
Is that for everything? Because rabbis build fences to prevent that, so you can do a malacha when it's a mitzvah at the end? Or though in this situation?
No. You can't do a malacha for a mitzvah.
Right.
But what you can do is a davar she'eino miskave. When your intent, let's say, for example, you ever open the refrigerator door and the light goes on? So that's called a davar she'eino miskave. It's not your intent for the light to go on. You just want to get the cold soda out of the fridge, okay? So why do we tell you not to open the door on Shabbos if you know the light's going to turn on? Even though you're not doing a biblical malacha, you're still doing a rabbinic prohibition since you know that as a byproduct of your opening the fridge, the light will turn on, okay? In this situation, because you're engaged in doing a mitzvah of fulfilling the mitzvah of deflowering the virgin and consummating the marriage, so the rabbi said that even though you know that there's a good chance that you're going to cause her to bleed, we still permit it. Now, the meforshim over here, we're not going to go into the whole thing, is that what if you know that it's for sure going to happen, what's called the psik reisha. You've heard that term before, psik reisha. You know for sure that a malacha will result. Normally, the chachamim prohibit that in all situations. So here, the commentaries say that it's always conceivable that you could consummate the marriage without bleeding. Because number one, let's say you're not 100% sure whether the membrane is intact. And even if you are certain that the membrane is intact, who's to say that the first act of coitus is going to rupture the membrane? Maybe it'll stretch and it won't rupture, okay? So you don't know for sure 100% that you're going to cause the bleeding. And therefore, it's not your intent to cause bleeding. It's not a psik reisha that bleeding will absolutely take place. And therefore, the argument is that it's permissible on Shabbos. Okay?
Doesn't that go
Just stretching a little bit here, but yeah, I hear you.
I'm not stretching. I'm not stretching. This is basic halacha.
Doesn't that go against the pimple example where even if you think that it could form blood, as in this case, there's a possibility that you can still.
Right. So popping the pimple, you have to have a a fairly good assumption that there won't be bleeding,
Right.
or that there's at least a chance that there won't be bleeding in order for us to permit you to pop the pimple. And by the way, the rabbis were only lenient to pop pimples because we assume that a person may be in pain if he doesn't pop the pimple.
Psychologically, pain too.
So it could be psychological pain as well.
Especially if it's like right on
There's
your
no
nose.
mitzvah.
Yeah.
There's no mitzvah to
Yeah.
pop a pimple, right?
So it takes that makes the mitzvah of the Be'ilah, right? It's such a strong mitzvah. It sounds like that. All these arguments before and after are built towards the importance of that mitzvah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, it's a mitzvah. Okay, so now we still have a couple minutes. So now the Gemara now tells us, how do we paskin? Do we paskin like the more stringent opinion that you're not allowed to deflower on Shabbos, or do we paskin like the more lenient position? Asi Omar, Aser. Rav Asi says, I guess it's Rav Asi. I don't know why they just call him Asi over here. Yeah, it's Rebbe Asi. He says it's Aser. You're not allowed to consummate the marriage for the first time on Shabbos. And Binyamin Ginzachya, this man named Binyamin who was from the city of Ginzach, Nafak va'amar mishmei de Rav mutar. He went out and said in the name of Rav that it is mutter to deflower a virgin on Shabbos. Shema Shmuel ve'ikpari luye umis. That Shmuel heard that this fellow Binyamin was paskening this way in the name of Rav. He got upset, and because Shmuel was such a tzaddik, when he would get upset at someone, that person would have to tziter. And Nebuch, this guy Binyamin, passed away as a result of Shmuel being upset with him. The Kari Iloye, Baruch Shenigafo. The Al Rav Kara Lo Yeune Latzadik Kolavin. Now, when this fellow Binyamin passed away, Shmuel said, thank God that God smote him, meaning that God was right to smite him because he did something that was completely wrong. And regarding Rav, thank God that Rav's reputation was remained intact. As it says in the verse in Mishlei, no evil will befall a righteous person. Now, what's the background of this story? There's two versions in the Meforshim as to what is going on over here. One opinion is that this fellow Binyamin was paskening that it's mutter, quoting Rav when Rav really never said it. And he was only quoting Rav in order to gain more credibility. And that's why he died. That seems to be the prevalent opinion. There's another opinion that Rav actually did say it, but Shmuel was upset because it was in Shmuel's city where we paskin like Shmuel, we don't paskin like Rav. So what are you doing telling people to paskin like Rav when you're really, you don't have Rav's psak doesn't have jurisdiction over here. So there's two different ways of understanding this Gemara, but that's the bottom line. And now we're going to get into a little bit more intricate topic having to do with virginal blood. We'll see that in Mirz Hashem tomorrow. Okay, have a great day.
Have a good day.